Takuma is a ruthless loser who is uglier than all your exes combined. Everything changed when he got isekai'd into his game as a demon lord and clapped everything in a skirt. This story starts in a dark room where Takuma, a king of nerds, logged into Cross Reverie, a game that summed up his entire existence. His character was Diablo, the feared demon lord who got pissed off whenever lovebirds showed up to challenge him, which reminded Takuma of his inability to get clapped. He kept punishing lovebirds until the clock struck 12, and he got summoned into a different world by the lips of two baddies. Takuma started trying to figure out how he was in Diablo's body, while the Mega Melon's elf and midget Pantherians started arguing. When he heard they were at Starfall Tower, the summoning point from the game, he realized that he was currently living every otaku's fantasy. He wanted to talk to the girls, but remembered that he had always been a friendless outcast who only spoke to people through games. He then used Diablo's voice to mask his low testosterone and commanded the girls to make up. The power from his command literally forced them to shake hands before slave collars appeared on their necks. Moments later, they had left the tower, and the girls were trying to figure out why their enslavement ritual had backfired. Takuma then realized that he was wearing Diablo's Demon King ring that deflected magic and explained it to them. They told him to follow them to the city so they could get free and finally introduce themselves. Miss Mega Melons was Shira and the midget was Rem. They were both wannabe adventurers who wanted his help in getting officially registered at the guild. They got to Faltra, the border city, and found an inn. Once inside, they met Mai, the demi-human receptionist, who almost made Takuma puke when she posed like a furry. He'd experienced another wave of fear when Shira asked to get a room with him. He tried to hide his lack of experience with a fake Sigma act, but when Rem also started trying to get a room with him, his cultured mind got scrambled. Moments later, all three of them were in a room, as trying to be independent feminists wasn't really taking the girls far. Takuma had started thinking about cultured activities for later, when a smoke show hottie showed up to see Rem. Celestine was the head of the town's mage association and had the responsibility of maintaining the barrier protecting it. She wanted to talk to Rem, but after seeing the collar on the girls, she got curious about him. They went down to the inn's pub to talk, but Takuma got distracted as Shira was showing him what she could do with a Magnum sausage. Takuma explained what happened to Celestine, and she decided to investigate ways to free the girls since he conveniently didn't know how. When he demanded an answer as to why she was looking for Rem, one of her mages named Gallic nearly made him break character. He managed to hide his lack of balls and scared Gallic off with a warning. Celestine then tried to get Rem to come with her, but she turned down the offer and told her she could take care of herself. After Celestine left, Takuma asked Rem why she was on the radar of such a powerful person, but she refused to answer. Sensing an important storyline due to his gamer experience, he tossed her fun-sized rice cakes across his shoulder and left to interrogate her while Shira decided to hang back and kept stuffing her face. Once in the room, he wasted no time pinning her down for questioning. When she asked him what he wanted to do, he couldn't find a body part that he could so he decided to start with her ear. So as he messed with it while demanding answers, she started making happy noises. When he blew on it, she went to cream paradise while he reminisced about what it felt like to play with his cat. By the time he realized what was happening, she had already gone past the point of return and asked if he would stick with her after learning her secret. He then promised to stay with her and seal the deal with a that made her inner walls flood with happy juices. After, she told him she was housing the soul of Krebskulm, the demon lord that he remembered as the strongest official boss in the game. This was why Celestine was offering her protection, as the only way the demon lord could escape was through her death. When he promised to help her get free of the demon lord's soul, she started crying and told him that no one had ever decided to stick around after hearing her truth. Later that night, he was outside thinking when Gallic showed up with a bunch of other mages and started trash-talking him. When he talked back after Gallic tossed a bottle of sake at him, Gallic summoned a level 30 fire-breathing salamander and ordered the beast to turn Takuma into grilled chicken. When he walked out of the flames without a scratch, Gallic made the beast hit him with another blast, but he treated it like a warm breeze and told Gallic that he was at level 150 while pulling out a staff. He then used the staff to blow up the salamander and went over to Gallic, who was pissing himself, to give him a strong warning. The next day, Takuma woke up, glad that his new fantasy life wasn't just a long dream, and suddenly felt a weird sensation. His left hand had gone rogue and refused to obey his commands to get off Shira's melon. He tried to get help from his right hand, but was also struggling. Unable to control his own limbs, he decided to let nature run its course until Shira woke up. She pulled her melon away and told him he could have whatever part of her plot he wanted if he made her his master. Rem also woke up and turned bright red when she saw his hand on. He managed to salvage the situation by getting into character. Later on, while walking through town with the girls, Takuma noticed that there were very few humans around. Shira explained that humans didn't really like being around naturally superior life forms, which made sense when he remembered Gallic's attempt to play Sigma the previous night. He then asked about how levels were assessed, and Rem, who was a level 40 summoner, told him that they would check it out at the guild. Shira, who didn't know her level as she was still unregistered, claimed she was probably higher than Rem by showing off her gravity-defying melons. At the guild, Takuma forgot how to read, so he made Shira fill the form out for him. The demi-human receptionist with monstrous melons then told him to make a blood seal and got splattered after he tore an artery in his thumb. She then showed them the magic measuring mirror, and after Shira filled it with her magic, her level turned out to be 30. Takuma was up next, but immediately he touched the mirror. A dark wave spread across town, causing an earthquake that terrified the girls. After he left, the mirror and things went back to normal. An ugly midget with bunny ears showed up. She was Sylvie, the guild master, who immediately asked them to come with her after introducing herself. In her office, Sylvie explained that Takuma's magic could not be measured, which meant that they wouldn't know what kind of quest to give him even if he went through with the registration. Takuma then told her that he was too broke to have standards, so she decided to accept him as an adventurer under the guild. After, she gave them their first quest from the Mages Association, which was to defeat a Medora snake in the man-eating woods. On the way there, Takuma wanted to use a teleportation spell to close the distance, but they told him that kind of magic didn't exist, which made him realize that their world wasn't exactly like the game. When they finally got to the woods, which looked like something out of the Conjuring multiverse later that day, Shira sensed some people watching them. After she pointed out their location in the trees, Takuma used elemental magic to burn them out. The stalkers were elves, led by Celsior, a commander who told Shira he was there to save her from Takuma. Shira happened to be the princess of the Elven kingdom, and they all thought she had been kidnapped by Takuma, so they demanded her release with arrows drawn. Shira told Celsior that she didn't want to go back to the kingdom, where she was going to be forced to become her brother's sausage handler. After Shira refused to go back with them, Rem felt her aura increasing and promised to help her fight them. Takuma then told the elves to show him what they were made of, so they shot at him with their arrows, but they bounced off his chest like twigs. While the girls started creaming from his alpha aura, he told the elves that they were a bunch of costumed clowns who wouldn't last a minute against him. Pissed off, Celsior whipped out a Tempest arrow and told him to meet his little friend. After the arrow's blast nearly blinded them, Takuma brushed the debris off his vibranium abs. He then pulled out his staff and used another elemental magic to freeze the entire forest in an instant. Feeling the instant frostbite, Gallic came out of hiding and roasted the elves for being incompetent weaklings that liked to clap their sisters. Knowing he was the one behind the suspicious quest, Takuma gave him a final warning, and Rem promised to tell on him to Celestine. Shira then told Celsior to tell her brother that she wasn't interested in becoming his clap toy, as she had a better life being broke with Takuma and Rem. Later that night, Rem had gone to talk to Celestine, and Takuma was left struggling to talk to Shira, as he never studied Riz during his life as a shut-in geek. When he eventually started talking about his promise to Rem, Shira got jealous and left him unable to move as she threw her monstrous melons on his chest. Seizing the opportunity to finally live out his greatest fantasy, he grabbed onto them and started talking about how he was an alpha male who could use any of them as he pleased. His alpha talk started to work on Shira and left him in shock when he noticed something hard on the tip of the melons. After he squeezed them and made her spill some of her juice on his cultured brain started to leak. He was about to take things a step further when he sensed bloodlust and turned to see Rem, who probably knew she could never have melons big enough to get him that excited. A couple of days later, Sylvie called the gang to her office for another quest specifically put out for Takuma. When she told them it was directly from Celestine, Takuma figured it was probably a form of apology for what happened. But Rem didn't want to accept it. She thought the unusually high pay tagged to it was a handout from Celestine, so she refused to take it. But Shira immediately reminded her that she was too broke to be proud. Seeing that she really didn't want to go, Takuma told Rem to hang back so he and Shira could handle it instead. They were on their way out of the guild when a knight that somehow managed to make Blue Eyes cringe stopped him. Emil had heard rumors of a certain demon dragging two hotties around town with slave collars, and from the looks of things he wasn't wrong. The girls told Takuma that Emil was the strongest warrior in the Adventurers Guild, and he wasted no time in approving their claims by telling Takuma that he was at level 50 before whipping out his sword to challenge him. Happy to finally see something similar to the game, Takuma put on the Sigmund act and roasted Emil's dollar store Disney Prince look. Emil went off the rails, telling Takuma that he was a pro-feminist and refused to listen when the girls tried to explain things. Once he took his stance, Takuma geeked out, remembering the move from his gamer days, and blocked it with his staff when Emil tried to use it. Seeing Takuma was no ordinary demon, Emil pulled back to activate another deadly move that took a while to activate. Takuma knocked him out in the middle of the charge-up. After regaining consciousness, Emil got back up, refusing to admit defeat, and was about to get his perfect smile destroyed when the girls told him to stop. They explained that they had become slaves due to their own incompetence and told him to mind his business. Takuma had started to feel bad for him when he hit them with the cringiest smile known to man and walked away, hiding his embarrassment while telling Takuma to holla if he even needed help. Moments later, Shira and Takuma were on their quest to deliver drinks to the Bridge of Ulug. After seeing a river, Shira swung her melons to get Takuma to agree to go skinny dipping, but he didn't want her to see his mini sausage and disagreed. At the bridge moments later, they got surrounded by knights who thought he was a fallen. Luckily, Boris had heard of his clapping escapades with the girls and recognized him. After Shira gave them the drinks, Boris told them that an army of over 100 fallen was currently en route to the bridge, hence the mass hysteria and evacuation. When Shira asked Takuma for the next move, he figured that the army of fallen was probably trying to get to Rem, so he wanted to head back. Just then, Boris handed them a thank you note for the wine, and when Takuma asked him why, he said something about trying to face his final battle like a Jega Chad. Takuma told him to work on his Sigmund act and walked in to fight for them. Moments later, the fallen army showed up, led by some thrift store version of Wonder Woman. Seeing the larger-than-life beasts, Takuma told them to head back inside, and when Boris tried to question him, Shira told him to shut his bit up. After they left, Takuma walked up to the fallen army and gave them a chance to leave. A mutated boar as big as your obese uncle then stood over him and immediately got blasted half a mile away. Meanwhile, back in the city, Rem got back to the inn where Celestine was waiting to tell her that she had fired Gallic. She had also heard that Takuma was a self-proclaimed demon lord and wanted to be sure that Rem wasn't just being blinded by his riz and chiseled abs. Rem was trying to cover up how down bad she was for Takuma when Gallic showed up with blood on his hands, asking for a second chance. He told Celestine that he had taken out most of the mages out of anger and refused to listen when she told him to pipe down. He then pulled out a demon blade that could see, and Rem immediately sent a summoning to stop him. After putting the blade in his chest, a fallen named Gregor burst out of him, happy to not have to listen to his insecure whining anymore. Back at the bridge, Takuma had taken out most of the fallen army, so Edelgard, the dwarf elf commanding them, got off her pet and went to take him on personally. While Takuma fought off Edelgard, Gregor was glad to have finally found his target. Celestine's barrier was the only thing stopping their invasion, and with Gallic's stupidity helping him sneak in, all he had to do was take her out. Hearing this, the mages told Rem to take Celestine to safety, and as they both ran out of the inn, Gregor used the mages' heads to break down the walls before chasing after them. Rem's adrenaline rush caused them to take a wrong turn, which left them cornered as Gregor caught up to them. Rem then summoned a three-horned Indian bull that rammed into Gregor and had its jawbone snapped by a nasty uppercut. The next moment, Emil, the Knight of Cringetopia, dropped in and asked Gregor if he preferred rice cakes or melons. Before Gregor could answer, he was surrounded by other adventurers ready to risk it all to protect Celestine. Emil tried to draw first blood, and while Gregor protected himself with his fists, he told the knight to try losing the excess gold, as it was so last season. To make him stop the pointless striking, Gregor released a magic energy blast and told Emil that his face was making him want to puke. Emil then tried to use his special move on him, but it was easily blocked before Gregor used magic bullets to put him down. The girls told him to quit trying to play Sigma, but he refused and told them they were safe with him as he charged up for another beatdown. At the bridge, The entire fallen army and knights watched like UFC fans while Takuma and Edelgard clashed swords at the speed of sound. Seeing that she couldn't land a hit even with all that speed, Edelgard charged up for her most powerful move, and Takuma flexed his vibranium abs, ready to take it. The shockwave from the strike nearly knocked Shira off the bridge. When she pulled back to see how damaged he was, he casually stood back up and popped his shoulder back in place. He then told her to stick to making dinner for her man, but started to get worried when he noticed that she wasn't backing down despite clearly being outmatched. Just then, Shira told him about what was happening with Celestine and Rem after hearing from a messenger. Realizing that this was Edelgard's plan all along, he told Shira and the knights to take cover before giving Edelgard one final warning to retreat. Seeing that she was adamant about getting smoked, he released a small white orb that slowly fell to the ground. Once it hit, the entire area lit up, taking out Edelgard and her entire army. The light faded, revealing a large crater that was a bridge moments ago. After seeing that she had somehow survived the blast, Takuma turned to leave with Shira and managed to successfully pull off the teleportation skill. By the time they got to Rem's location, Emil was looking like a homeless boxer, while Rem was losing the little blood she had from her head. Shira went to check on her, and Takuma gave Celestine a healing potion before giving Emil permission to take a break from being Gregor's sandbag. Gregor refused to believe him when he said he had defeated Edelgard and tried to use the magic bullets, but they were instantly reflected back by Takuma's Demon Lord ring. Gregor was trying to figure out how he could reflect magic. Gregor tried to use a gravity amplifying skill on him. Like before, Takuma made his own version of the same skill and left the mutated bush lizard begging for his life as he was crushed into the ground by his rapidly increasing weight. Takuma decided to put him in a dimension of darkness he casually had lying around and sealed him for eternity. With Gregor defeated, the girls ran over to thank him for saving them, but he once again had no idea what to say in the situation, so he claimed he had simply done it so they could keep suffocating him with their melons. When they gladly accepted to be his clapping slaves, Shira told him to take a quick sniff of her melons, but they were too bouncy for his head to sit on them, and caused him to bounce into Rem's chest of steel, which immediately knocked him out. Days after the fallen attack, those who lost their lives were buried, and the locals slowly found a way to get back to their normal lives. 10 days later, Takuma was about to start another 12-hour nap when Shira pounced on him and almost made his dopamine receptors implode when he saw her melons in their full royal glory. She had started to get him bricked when Rem showed up and dropkicked her. She then used her melons to swallow his arms again, and Rem tried to do the same, but her ribs were the only things grinding up his elbow. The next moment, Sylvie showed up with a new quest. The lord of the city had received a threat from the Elven kingdom demanding that Shira be returned to them or there would be a war. The quest was for Diablo to find a way to stop the war from happening since he technically owned her. Hearing that she was now likely going to cause a war because of her dreams of independence, Shira pressed her melons into Takuma's arm to remind him that she was worth fighting for. Takuma started having a panic attack after realizing that he was suddenly being made to stop a war. To make matters worse, Sylvie told him that Prince Kira had put a bounty on Shira's head to get random adventurers interested in capturing her. Hearing that the elf prince had gone as far as putting a bounty on his sister's head, Takuma got pissed. His harem dreams, which had just kicked off, were being threatened, and he wasn't going to stand for it. To thank him for choosing to fight for her, Shira put him in a leglock and suffocated him with her melons. On the way to see the lord in charge of the city, Sylvie told them that he had once taken down an army of fallen and had anger management issues. When they got to Galfred's palace, the girls introduced themselves and prayed Takuma would be able to do the same without threatening to scorch the earth. After a couple of seconds of deep internal conflict, he managed to speak like a normal person, but he couldn't keep his act together for long and threatened to deep-fry Galfred's sausage. But thankfully, Galfred was into extreme culture practices. With introductions done, he stood on business and explained the obvious, which was that Shira should just go back to her Alabamian kingdom, but Takuma rejected the idea. So Galfred asked Shira why she preferred being a broke slave. After she justified her insanity with the excuse of having an adventurous soul, he spoke to Takuma to confirm his stance and entrusted the anti-war mission to him. He then introduced them to Alicia, a female imperial knight sent from the royal capital to oversee the group. Takuma was shocked to see a female imperial knight, as they were typically men. He became even more skeptical when he saw how quickly she became friends with the girls. He feared that she would be able to see through his demon lord tirade. Before heading to the Elven kingdom, He took them to a weaponsmith to get a weapon considerably weaker than his staff, as he needed something that didn't obliterate anything he touched. After getting it, they were about to leave when a smoke bomb went off, and a bunch of dwarves kidnapped Shira for the bounty. As he chased after them, 2 others tried to block him and became instant graffiti. While Alicia and Rem took care of the rest, he pursued the dwarves carrying Shira through an alley. When he made it out of the alley, Shira's fish cakes landed on his face, as the dwarves had been caught by Emil, the creepy pro-feminist who once again knew exactly where they were, and Emil left to pound feminist energy into their tiny heads. Takuma, who had become worried about Shira after almost losing her, told her to remain by his side, and Rem, of course, joined in as well. Alicia had started to piss him off with her try-hard attitude, so he told her to ease up and enjoy being a useless tag-along. They then went to get head food, as her desperate hunger for attention had drained her. The next day at the inn's pub, Celestine showed up to tell them about a lead she had gotten that could help with their slave collars. Alicia reminded them that there was an Alabamian prince somewhere in the woods scheming to clap his sister, and decided to head to the slave trader's shop where Celestine said they could get help. Before entering the slave shop, Takuma prepared his mind to withstand any cultured activities he might see, but it turned out he didn't need to, as they instead saw the most elegant display of slavery known to man. The shop owner showed up in strings that barely held her large aged melons in place. After taking a look at Diablo, she saw the flow of his magic and asked if he could spare some for her. Shira could apparently also see magic flow. She then took them into her office, where she asked Rem for her baby's gender. She sensed immense power coming from her womb, and assumed that Krebskulm's soul within her was a demon baby. Takuma ordered the lady to spill the tea on the collars. She then asked everyone to leave except Takuma and Shira. Rem, who almost got exposed, sat outside, and Alicia told her of a childhood spell she had learned for hiding secrets. After Rem closed her eyes to the spell, Alicia used a different spell to reveal the binding magic across Rem's body that sealed Krebskulm's soul. Meanwhile, back in the tent, the lady had put Shira in the tiniest special garment she could find and told Takuma to trace the flow of her magic. After finding an entry point on her melon, he used it to trace the flow, making Shira lose control of her senses as he squeezed and twisted her to follow the endless train of her magic. He then placed a hand on her belly button and proceeded to fill her up with his magic as the lady commanded. Rem and Alicia, who could hear her screams from outside the tent, after he had failed to remove the collar, so they went back to the inn that night where Takuma was drained from all the pouring and Shira was energized, as she was filled with his magic. After Alicia disappointed the creep by leaving to sleep in another room, she saw an elf at the door. He was Kira, the Alabamian first prince of the Elven kingdom and Shira's brother. He came to take her back and almost got twisted like a pretzel by Takuma. He then decided to leave after apologizing to Shira for neglecting her feelings and claiming that he would be okay with whatever decision she made. Later that night, Shira couldn't sleep and was stargazing when Rem joined her. They talked about their plans for the future, and Shira claimed she wanted to start her own cafe. Rem told her that she would like to get a job in the cafe after she took care of her little world-ending demon problem. Shira then pounced on her and used the opportunity to play with her tail, which turned out to be another special spot for Rem, who then opened up as Shira stroked her tail and filled her up the same way Takuma did to her earlier, giving her a taste of the heavens. Takuma, who was awake the whole time, was having the time of his life listening to the two of them. Meanwhile, somewhere in the woods, Kira was playing the flute at midnight like a psych ward escapee and revealed his true nature and strong desire to clap his sister. In a dream, Takuma relived his early otaku years, where he actually had some gamer buddies that he would hang out with at the park. That was until he heard them calling him a freak that was only useful to them because he had good equipment. At least now, he was practically living the dream in a rundown inn with Shira's melons stuffing his face. After the morning workout, Alicia was headed to make a report to Galford, while Rem went to meet with Celestine. While waiting for Kira to return, Takuma decided to make recovery potions with Shira to prepare for any random battles ahead. He was trying to figure out how to prepare the potions when Shira's mega melons started to dangle right in front of him. After nearly losing himself in their jiggles, he realized that his hands were on autopilot. Realizing that her gravity-defying melons were the secret to his efficiency, he made her stay on all fours so he could enter beast mode. Moments later, she caught him smiling and thought he felt proud of himself, but he was simply glad to have found a new technique to increase the intensity of his cultured behavior. His smile seemed to have triggered something in her, but as she was about to tell him what it was, she heard Kira's flute, and her eyes lost their glimmer. After Takuma saw his wagon outside, he turned to talk to Shera, who just casually told him that she had decided to go back to her kingdom. He stopped her to ask why she suddenly changed her mind, so she explained getting her airways clogged by his BO wasn't good for a princess like her. After he watched her leave with Kira, Rem and Alicia showed up. He told them what happened, and when Rem asked for the next move, he told her that he was going to take a nap. He actually couldn't sleep and spent a couple of hours getting depressed as he thought about what life would be like without her megamelons. When Rem eventually came in to talk about it, she suggested that Shera was under a spell, but he already knew that. He had noticed Kira's weird flute earlier, but since he never saw it while playing the game, he didn't know how to reverse its effects. When Rem told him she was still going to try and save Shera, his fear of rejection kept him unable to move until Rem reminded him of who Shera actually was. Feeling his aura coming back, he picked up his staff and told her to get ready for the greatest rescue mission to grace the earth. On their way out, Alicia asked to come with, even if she was going to essentially become the team's Sakura. Later that evening, Shera was chained up in Kira's camp and struggled to get free. After using the spell from his flute to turn her into a puppet again, he told her to explain the kind of orders she received from Takuma. When she told him that Takuma wasn't into, he got disappointed and decided to show her how it's done. An explosion somewhere in the camp caused him to drop a vase containing slime. The creature crawled over to Shera and wrapped itself around her, melting off her clothes while Kira checked to make sure she still had the melons he had been craving for so long. He was about to use the mind control spell to finally make her his personal clap toy when Takuma tore down the entrance and freed her. Kira then went outside to see his entire camp of soldiers burning and reminded Takuma that his actions could lead to a war. When Takuma explained that he just wanted to hear Shera's thoughts again, Kira activated the spell and made her say what he wanted. Takuma then used his command over her to make her tell them how she actually felt. After she told them that she actually wanted to be Takuma's clap slave, Kira summoned the Force Hydra, a world-ending secret art exclusive to the elves. This was the second time Takuma was coming across a beast he had never seen before in the game. Already shaking in her boots, Shera told him that his aura was no match for the multi-headed guardian deity that conveniently had chainsaw teeth littered across its mouth. After asking them to stand back, he watched as Kira tried to command the beast and almost received an instant burial. Takuma hit it with an earth skill and felt confident after taking off one of its heads. When the creature regenerated and knocked him down with an elemental blast, Takuma ran out of tactics and started running to dodge the rain of attacks that followed. Shera then told him about a core in its body that was the only way it could be destroyed, but according to Kira, the core was always moving, making finding it impossible. This would have been a problem for a regular otaku, but years of gaming and depressing solitude had given Takuma enough gamer IQ to know what to do. He got under the creature's belly and used an attack that roasted the beast from the inside, destroying the core in the process. After taking out the Hydra, he was about to get rid of Shera's psychotic brother, but she stopped him, asking for his life to be spared. The Alabamian prince was making his escape when his head suddenly fell off from a slice. Galford pulled down the camouflage skill, revealing a small army that he immediately commanded to find the rest of the Elven warriors. When Takuma asked what he was doing, he'd explained war to the newbie and told him to give up Shera, as she was from the enemy kingdom. Takuma naturally refused and got sealed in an energy field designed for powerhouses like him. When Alicia tried to step in, Galford easily sliced her sword in two with deadly speed. After seeing the flow of magic from the energy field, Takuma tore through it, and as Galford prepared to handle him, Alicia snuck to safety. The next moment, Takuma's explosion skill had been dodged by Galford, who was now attacking him at super speed with his sword. Using a magic mind skill, he made Sir Runzelot take a breather before he launched another attack that got him put on ice. After breaking free of the ice skill a little too early, but he still managed to use a final skill to blow Sir Runzelot to the ground. Instead of taking him out permanently, Takuma then put on the alpha male act to make it seem like Galford wasn't worth his time. With the battle over, Rem went to help Celsior and his mates, while Takuma went to console Shera. Days later, things were back to normal, including Takuma being broke and depressed since he had technically beat up his own boss, so Sylvie used the opportunity to spend some time drinking with him. What she thought would lead to a slow and memorable workout turned into a lightweight Takuma turning her into a human pillow. He then ran his fingers across her jelly bean, causing her to make happy noises until he passed out after feeling the cream. The next day, Alicia was at the imperial capital after making a report on the Galford incident to the emperor. On her way out, she ran into Sadler, a paladin who had sent an entire village to hell the previous night for worshipping the demon lord. After their catch-up, Sadler told her that he planned to visit Faltra, as a priest had mentioned the possibility of the demon lord being brought back in the city. Somewhere in the woods near Faltra, Rem was giving Shira summoning lessons to improve her skill. All she was able to summon was a mutated turkey that could share its vision with whoever summoned it. They initially thought the turkey was useless, but Takuma demonstrated that the turkey's shared vision could be used to spot enemies that were far out of the normal field of vision. Moments later, Shira caught a whiff of some nasty BO coming from Rem, so she suggested taking a bath before her nose fell off. The moment Shira's monstrous melons bounced as she took her shirt off, Takuma realized he was in trouble. After Rem also got ready to skinny dip, he told them to take care of themselves while he hid his wood behind a rock. Instead of bathing like regular people, Shira decided to clean Rem with her tongue, and she responded by trying to tear her melons out. Hearing the weird sounds they were making, Takuma was starting to go nuts until he heard a familiar voice. Edelgard was back, and after picking Rem up like a life-size doll, she told them that she knew the soul of Krebskulm was inside her. Later on, Shira gave Rem a hug, as she had just found out about her life as a container for the world-ending demon lord's soul. When Rem asked Edelgard why she hadn't attacked her yet, she skipped the part where Takuma would incinerate her, and told them that simply unaliving Rem wouldn't help revive the demon lord. She told them of a ritual that would revive the demon lord without harming Rem, and promised that the fallen would let them enjoy their harem if they did it. After Takuma told her that she had managed to get shorter, she put her spear to his neck to threaten him, and told them to bring Rem to Starfall Tower in 3 days for the ritual. On the day of the ritual, they were at a pub using cats to help build Rem's confidence when Alicia showed up and asked them to head back to the inn. On the way there, she told them about Sadler, who was now in the city and probably wasn't going to have a friendly chat with the self-proclaimed demon lord. As they came up on a corner, Sadler was right there with his boys, looking for Alicia. After he introduced himself to them, Takuma managed to instantly screw things up by telling them who he was. Alicia managed to pass it off as a joke, but Sadler wasn't laughing anymore. Rem tried to tell Sadler to mind his business, so he reminded her of her place with nothing but his aura, which left her on the ground in pain. After a second of confusion, Takuma took a closer look at Rem and saw the cheap trick Sadler claimed was a divine power from God. When he called him out for being a phony, Sadler decided to teach him a lesson, but Takuma's demon lord ring did its thing and reflected Sadler's stone curse back at him. After Sadler's minions carried him away, Alicia told Takuma that he should have clapped his ass, and Takuma started to suspect she wasn't as simple-minded as she looked. Later that evening, he went to get the girls for the ritual, but they wanted to tell Alicia about it first. After they told her and she instantly forgot her years of training as a loyal soldier to support their plan to revive the demon lord, Takuma's suspicion sensor went off. He ended up blaming his suspicion on his inability to have a healthy relationship, so they left for the tower. At the tower that night, Edelgard had already prepared for the ritual and surprisingly wasn't bothered by seeing an Imperial Knight with them. To revive the demon lord, Takuma was going to pour a crazy amount of magic into the demon lord's soul in hopes that it would be enough to cause a revival. After Rem got on the altar, she asked Takuma to be gentle as it was her first time. He placed his hand on her belly, and once he could sense Krebskulm's soul, he poured some of his magic into her. After the first round, Edelgard told them that he had to go deeper to reach the demon lord. She suggested creating a hole in Rem, but since that would have led to her losing the 2 pints of blood she had in her body, Edelgard pointed out a second hole inches above her petted rice cakes that could do the job. Takuma was starting to wonder if the writers of his life story needed to get arrested. But with no other option available, he uncovered the hole and went to work. Rem's happy noises made it hard to focus, but he managed to keep his mind in control. He eventually got deep enough to find Krebskulm's soul. After finding it, Diablo blasted inside her, pouring every ounce of pent-up magic he had to fill up the demon lord's soul. When he finished, the entire altar lit up with an energy blast as Krebskulm's soul came out of Rem's body. An orb of pure energy then fell to the altar and covered them in a dark fog. The next moment, somebody's daughter in a Halloween costume stood on the edge, claiming to be the demon lord. When Takuma told her to go find her mummy, she proved herself by almost blowing up the tower with her power. In a weird turn of events, she forgot how to use her power and started asking them why she was supposed to be a world ender in the first place. Seeing that the time in Rem's womb had given her amnesia, they somehow convinced her to stop hating humanity, and she agreed. Shara then gave her biscuits to cure her hunger, and she decided to dedicate herself to eating all the biscuits on the planet. While they all laughed at how innocent she looked, Alicia seemed to be unable to understand what the hell was going on. With the demon lord becoming a couch potato, they decided to take her back to town, and were on their way there when a mutant eagle with an abnormal goatee showed up. Ulrich was an old fallen who had served several demon lords over the centuries, and was smart enough to know that something was wrong when he saw the biscuit warrior who was meant to be their greatest commander. He immediately tried to take her out and got blocked by a Delgard. After he tossed her at least 100 feet away, he smashed her into the ground before picking her up to squash her tiny head for being incompetent. He then sensed an attack and dodged Takuma's attempt to take him out. Takuma then used a second skill to roast him midair, but he survived it and charged at him with full speed. The mind skill from earlier also couldn't stop him, but the reflection ability of the demon ring ended up being what stopped him in his feathery tracks. After Takuma used a blast skill to stop his final attempt to get Krebskulm, he told Takuma that he would be back and dipped. On the rest of the way back, they decided to change Krebskulm's name to Clem for safety reasons. After getting back to the inn, Takuma was worn out from the excessive magic use, and Shara decided to use the fact that Rem was staying with Alicia to get some alone time with him. When Clem saw what she was doing and got curious, Shara asked her to join in so they could both help Takuma get his energy back. As their happy noises slowly increased in intensity, Takuma also reached the divine point of explosion and passed out with them shortly after. Their happy noises had woken up Alicia, who then revealed that her true wish was for Clem to exterminate all of humanity because she had daddy issues. Meanwhile, inside a chapel, Sadler had finally gotten free of the stone curse and promised to have his vengeance on Takuma. The next day, the girls were having a sing-along on their way to a cafe, and Alicia was slowly losing her grip on sanity. When they got to the cafe, Takuma sat at a different table with Celestine, talking about the latest addition to his harem. Celestine ended up being cool with the idea that the demon lord was running around town eating biscuits, and also didn't care that Takuma was clapping her. On the way back, Takuma and Shara suddenly noticed that Rem, Clem, and Alicia had vanished. Alicia had taken them through an alley to a hidden location, where she told them she was planning on returning the rest of Clem's memories, so she could do her job and take out the human race. When Clem threatened to make her crisper than deep-fried wings, she begged her to make it as hot as possible, which made Rem realize that she was the one who caused what happened with Gallic. Sadler then suddenly showed up, and Alicia told him that Rem was a demon lord worshipper who was trying to kidnap innocent little Clem. To defend herself from the false prophet, she immediately summoned Azulau, the three-horned bull. Sadler commanded his minions to become human shields for him and finished off the bull while they held it back. Rem then got choked out and put into a wagon with Clem, who gave her a biscuit to make her feel better about being smacked around. On the way to wherever they were being taken, Clem asked her why she had helped her during Ulrich's attack on her life. Rem explained that since she was technically her mother, she couldn't bring herself to hate her like she should. She had also realized that Clem was being treated like a ticking time bomb simply because she came into the world with an insane level of power. After swallowing the rest of her biscuits, Clem reminded her that she could actually roast the entire paladin squad and free them, but Rem made her promise to keep eating biscuits like a good little girl. When they eventually got to the chapel from last night, the paladins took Rem into what turned out to be a chapel of torture that Sadler used to purify demon lord worshippers before sending them to heaven. Rem realized that he was simply a blood-hungry psycho and asked Alicia why she was comfortable siding with him. When she started talking about all the times they shared together, Alicia got tired of the whining and left Sadler to do what he does best. By dark, Takuma was getting frustrated looking for the girls, and with no other option left, he went into the guild, where Emil was cooking up some fake hero story to tell the rest of the adventurers. Realizing that he would lose aura points by asking for help, he froze up. Thankfully, a young boy showed up and told them he had seen the paladins taking the girls to the chapel. While Takuma raced to the chapel, Lord Galford was on the city walls, looking at an army of fallen led by Edelgard approaching the city. He immediately sent word to Celestine, who started reinforcing the barrier to protect the city. Back at the chapel, Rem was held down by the paladins while Sadler nearly cut off her ear before stabbing her with his sword. Clem had started to get pissed off at that point, and when she tried to get him to stop, he swung his blade at her. The slash tore off her robe, revealing her true nature, so Sadler and his boys turned to face her. Rem jumped in and ended up taking a deep cut to the back as she pushed Clem out of the way. As she fell to the floor, bleeding out, Sadler put the rest of the swords he could find in her bag. Seeing this, Clem went berserk and completed her resurrection by transforming into a giant 5,000 Sikh demon lord. Sadler thought he still stood a chance and got his eyes bloodied before Clem burned him into nothingness. Takuma had finally made it to the chapel by then, and Shara also showed up after using her turkey shot to find Rem. Takuma gave her all his healing potions to save Rem, while he went to stop Clem from destroying all of humanity. Alicia had gotten to the fallen army and luckily kept her head intact when Edelgard told Ulrich that she was a part of their success. Meanwhile, on the city walls, Sylvie went to see Galford and told him to leave the metal monstrosity in the city to Takuma, who was struggling to communicate with Clem. After dodging some of Clem's punches that instantly turned the ground to lava, Takuma realized that he had to set up his greatest attack to take her down while containing the intensity of their battle. But with Clem seconds away from pulverizing him, he had to do it while running around the cemetery dodging her attacks. After making it to the destroyed chapel, Shira found Rem, and after pouring all the potions down her throat, she came back from the other side. But with the potions being the only ones left, Diablo was now actually fighting for his life, and it wasn't looking good as Clem had switched to throwing the graves of Sadler's victims at him. After Emil showed up and saved the girls from one of the graves, he took them out of the chapel and gave Takuma the heads up to use his attack. His attack engulfed Clem in a combination of elemental tornadoes that burned a crater into the ground and left Clem looking like a baked mutant roach. She still stood up after taking his deadliest hit, but by then, Rem was back on her feet with Shira's help and made her return to her less terrifying form. After Clem returned to normal, Ulrich told Edelgard that she was going to have to become a sandbag for the entire army as punishment for wasting their time. By then, the group had reunited, and Sylvia immediately addressed the elephant in the room. They couldn't let the demon lord keep wandering around, snacking on biscuits, so they decided to officially add her to Takuma's harem. After convincing her of the benefits of being a slave to the self-proclaimed demon lord, she agreed. Takuma sealed the deal with a kiss. Back at the inn, the girls got changed and joined the exhausted demon lord in bed as he was too tired for the usual workout. Before they could get some shut-eye, Alicia came in and took Shira hostage with a knife to her throat. She then took them to another room where Edelgard was slowly drifting to the great beyond after the fallen army took their frustrations out on her. Clem brought her back to the other side and told her to join them for a biscuit party instead of getting bruised up by Ulrich every time she failed to do his job for him. Unable to forgive herself for her betrayal, Alicia tried to unalive herself. She told them about her daddy issues and how it created her villain origin story that drove her to try and end her own race. Takuma stopped her and gave a speech about starting over on her own terms, which struck a chord with him since he had been similarly isolated until his summoning. After his speech, he nearly collapsed from exhaustion, so the girls decided to all help him get his energy back with their plots. Unable to process the various plots before his eyes, Takuma's dopamine receptors fried, causing him to pass out. The next day, Alicia set off to find the good side of humanity, while Takuma continued to manage his harem.
Much later, a smoke show nun named Lumina and her paladin Tria were running through the woods to escape an enemy, but a demon worm ambushed them and munched on Tria like a Dorito, while Lumina watched in horror. The paladin drag queen named Jewalt finally caught up to her and told her to give up, but she started praying to God for help, so he summoned a mutated mushroom to snatch up her holy plot. As the mushroom ripped her melons open and caused her to make happy noises, he enjoyed the show.
You sussy baka!
But then her prayers released a powerful magic beam right before Diablo crashed into the mushroom. Earlier on, Shira's melons were causing a minor tremor as she walked through a field with Rem and suggested sunbathing with no clothes on. While they both started to argue about it, Diablo was busy reminiscing about how interesting his life had become after he got summoned into their world. Shara brought him back to reality with her melons to ask for his opinion on her plotful sunbathing idea, and Rem also used her mini melons to distract him, causing his brain cells to overheat. He pushed them aside and reminded them of the spell they came out to practice before testing it out on a log. He got on it to see how far it could fly and kept moving until he saw a beam of magical energy from the forest. Just then, his magic wore off, causing him to fall into the mutant mushroom. He was trying to figure out what happened when Lumachina's plot scrambled his already cultured mind. She called him God and thanked him for answering her prayers despite seeing the very unholy horns on his head. The whole time, his brain was on a commercial break because of her melons, so he covered her up with his cape to regain his focus, but she still managed to tease his inner freak with it. Gewalt got tired of listening to them and told her that he was a demon, but Lumachina refused to accept the obvious fact, and Diablo started to realize that all the women he had met so far had serious mental problems. He asked Gewalt why a paladin was trying to clap a nun when they both worked under the church, but Gewalt said he was only following the orders of someone called Vicious. Diablo asked why they thought hiring a cross-dressing yapper as an assassin would be effective, so Gewalt decided to shut him up by summoning another demon worm. Diablo got ready to destroy it, but a second worm opened up the ground to swallow him. He caught Lumachina and jumped back to the surface before using a wind skill to shred both worms in an instant. He commended Gewalt on being strong enough to summon them while fondling Lumachina's melons. But Gewalt still wanted to blow off steam and summon stronger monsters to finish the job. Diablo then decided to get serious and used his blizzard skill to freeze Gewalt and his monsters along with the entire forest. He thought the cold would affect Lumachina and let her use his body to warm up right before Shera and Rem caught up to them. They saw her plot and thought he was up to no good as usual, but he carried Lumachina away to avoid their questions. Back at the inn that night, they both finally got a chance to talk to her, but she was more curious about their relationship with Diablo, who she was still calling God. Shera started explaining how their negative IQ points led to them becoming his love slaves, but Rem stopped her and said he was just the leader of their adventure guild. Lumachina got upset and said he had to be God because only the Holy One could see her plot. But then Shera asked if she could also see it, so Rem pinched her rice cakes to shut her up. Lumachina then said she had to become Diablo's wife if he wasn't actually God. At the time, he had just told Clem to stay hidden so they could figure out who Lumachina actually was, and Edelgard offered to keep watching her. Just then, he heard the girls scolding Lumachina for thinking she could just marry the great Diablo, so he went to check on them. Lumachina asked for his true identity, but he didn't want to say that he was a demon lord, so he switched to alpha mode and said his true identity was a secret. She immediately got on her knees and asked him to become her master, but he first wanted to know who she really was. She then activated her divine powers to show that she was the church's head priest. They got shocked and asked why the church's most respected priest was on the run from one of her own, so she told them about the head cardinal named Vicious, who had an army of paladins under his control and wanted her sent to the Lord because she started asking questions about their unholy activities in the church. She also told them about a paladin named Batutta, who was rumored to be a powerful and noble man. She was trying to reach him for help, and Tria was trying to get her there safely, but she unfortunately became worm food. She started crying for Tria, and that made the girls feel bad, so they started rubbing Diablo's shoulders to hypnotize him so he would offer to take her to Batutta in one piece. The sight of her divine melons was all he needed to agree to it. But then Clem came in with Edelgard, and they both challenged her because they could feel the holy energy leaking out of her body. Diablo stopped them from fighting, but Clem refused to have anything to do with her. The next day, they met up with Mei, Sylvie, Celestia, and Emil to ask for their help watching over Clem and Edelgard. Afterwards, Shera gave her a suffocating hug with her melons, and Clem infused her bow with dark magic to keep her safe before they all started the journey to get to Batutta. After weeks of traveling across the desert, they finally got to the Zircon Tower city where Batutta had been stationed. As they made their way in, the girls noticed that the villagers all seemed like they could use some spare change. Just then, a beast man named Horn introduced himself to Diablo and started talking about a dungeon in the city. He suddenly got excited and asked about a bunch of slimes on the 3rd level of the dungeon to be sure it was the same one he had been searching for. Before he could ask him a couple more questions, he heard Lumachina arguing with a soldier over a mother who desperately wanted help for her child. The soldier told her to make a donation to the church if she wanted healing from a priest, and Lumachina demanded to know why the church was demanding payment to help innocent civilians. Horn told Diablo that the soldier was part of a violent brigade that worked for paladins and cardinals of the church to exploit the people. Just then, the soldier got tired of listening to Lumachina and tried to knock her out, but Diablo used his staff to blast him away. He then asked the woman about her child's sickness, so she showed them a bunch of markings, and Diablo immediately recognized the illness. The child was a mark away from a one-way trip back to heaven, and the church had refused to help her out, so Lumina decided to cure the baby. Horn said it would be impossible, but then Lumina asked for Diablo's protection and knelt down to start a prayer that activated her divine powers. After the prayer saved the lady's child from getting sent up to the clouds, they all tried to celebrate it, but then the ground started to shake, and they all saw a sand whale heading straight for the city. Diablo and the girls went to get a closer look and saw that a ship was leading it to the city to avoid getting swallowed. The girls thought all hope was lost, but Diablo acted like defeating the whale was going to be a walk in the park, while secretly coming close to crapping his pants. He started chanting spells to combine his strongest attacks and created an arrow infused with dark magic. After amplifying its effect, he blasted the whale's snout, causing it to stop its rampage before the blast ripped a giant hole across its face. His attack kept draining the whale's life force and almost blew the girls away, but Diablo knew it wasn't enough and tried to come up with another attack. Just then, someone used a high-level martial arts skill to blast the whale before another series of high-level magic bullets finished the job, causing the whale to fall back into the sand. The girls thought Diablo was behind all of them, and Shara thanked him with her milkers. But then Batutta showed up with his soldiers to ask if he was behind the first attack. After the soldier from earlier on told Batutta about the beating Diablo gave him, Lumina demanded to know why Batutta gave his soldiers permission to torment the villagers. Lieutenant Glazer warned her against speaking to Batutta and tried to attack her again, but Batutta made him choke on his own teeth before jumping off the horse to pay his respects to Lumina. Diablo and the girls were glad to see that he wasn't a bad guy, but then Fones showed up with a magic gun and called him a thief. Batutta told her to leave, but she demanded respect and reminded him that she was the lord governing the entire city. Lumina asked why she was calling Batutta a thief, so she told her about the huge donations they were demanding from the locals. Batutta said it was because she had closed down the church and asked for more tax payments, which cut them off from the supplies they needed to keep operating. She asked why they didn't just pray to God for supplies, so Lumina took over to remind her that God works in mysterious ways. Fones decided to test his mysteries by trying to blast a hole through her chest, but Diablo and Batutta blocked her. After calling their faith a joke because they didn't trust God to protect her, she asked for the person that used a combination of dark magic on the whale, and Diablo thought he was about to fight a feminist gunslinger. But Batutta said the person had already left, so Fones went back to her tower. Moments later, they were all in a carriage on the way to Batutta's mansion and saw a long line of locals outside a tent. He explained that they had been waiting for a prayer for days because there were very few priests, and they only prioritized the people that made donations. On the other side of the tent, a bunch of pocket-heavy nobles were enjoying refreshments after making donations, a scene that made Lumina feel bad for the regular people. Afterwards, they were at Batutta's mansion eating all the donations until Diablo noticed a scar on Lumina's arm and asked about it. She told him it probably happened during all the fighting and said the healing ability she had didn't work on her body. So he went back to stuffing his face while she asked Batutta for a chat. After dinner, Diablo got into a bath to clean up, and Shara showed up, so he thought she wanted to talk about something. But then her plot melted his brain. He immediately covered up his brick before she got in and started washing his back with her melons. After cleaning his back, she switched to his abs and eventually got to his milk stick. Meanwhile, Lumina and Rem were at a table waiting until Batutta showed up for their chat. After getting seated, he promised to get his soldiers in check and told her not to worry about the people anymore, but she was more interested in the disease from earlier on. She claimed it was a curse, which meant someone was intentionally making the people sick, and he commended her for being strong enough to sense its power. Lumina realized that he knew about it and demanded answers, but she suddenly got dizzy and dropped. Rem also got defensive and tried to figure out what was going on, but she also felt dizzy and collapsed. At the time, Shara had just finished washing Diablo with her melons and asked if he wanted more, but he sensed someone's presence and got ready to attack. Horn told him to chill out and came out of hiding before taking them to Batutta's office to explain what happened to the girls. Diablo wasn't completely shocked by what happened and said he already knew about the curse before heading out with them to find the girls. Moments later, Rem woke up beside Lumina and started trying to figure out where they had been brought to. Lumina sensed some people around and asked Rem if she could see them, so she took a closer look and realized that they were in a cultured den of love. She was struggling to explain it in a way Lumina could understand when Batutta showed up and made Shiliu show them a jar of dark energy containing the curse's essence. He said the love addicts scattered across the dungeon were actually believers who once loved the Lord with all their heart until they tasted the forbidden fruit. Their constant sinning was what led to the concentration of dark powers that they used to create the curse. Lumina asked for his true agenda, so he revealed his plan to create an even stronger dose of the curse by corrupting her so he could use it on Fones. He then asked Shiliu to do the honors, so she shoved a magic stick into Lumina's snail and gave her a demonstration of her tongue powers. Before she could destroy Lumina's purity, Diablo broke into the dungeon and freaked out when he saw the clap fest. Batutta was surprised that he found the secret dungeon so soon, so Diablo told him to consider hiring stronger soldiers and boasted about his strength as the demon lord while secretly praying for his mummy. Batutta called him a washed-up loudmouth to get him pissed, so Diablo tried to smoke him with the explosion skill, but the blast caused the dungeon to break down and almost sent him plummeting to his end. Batutta then said the dungeon was designed to restrict high-level magic users like him from going all out and charged in with his spear. Diablo tried to counter, but he was too slow and nearly got his arm sliced off. With only one arm left, he decided to use a tracking spell and set up hidden mines on the wall to blow him up if he tried to dodge. Batutta switched to parkour and used the stairs to dodge all the attacks before charging up his spear and stabbing right through Diablo's heart. As he dropped to his knees, they all thought he was a goner, and Batutta mocked him for thinking he could win. But then Diablo grabbed his arm and activated an ice spell that slowly froze him. After Batutta cut off his arm to stop the spread, Diablo said his cloak and horns were infused with regenerative magic to keep him alive and asked Batutta if he had another trick up his sleeve. Batutta immediately gave Shili the signal, so she brought a knife out of her dildo to clap Rem. Diablo got confused and tried to come up with a plan to stop the both of them, but Shili suddenly got hit by Shera's arrow and was turned to stone. Horn started freeing the girls from the cross, so Diablo told Batutta to accept defeat and felt better when he got on his knees. Just then, Batutta started casting a spell, and Diablo realized that he was trying to take them all down with him, so he countered the spell with a blast from his staff, but the combination of both their powers started bringing the dungeon down. After overpowering Batutta, he carried Shera in his arms and jumped off to meet up with the others. At the time, Fones was getting strangled by Verness, a demon general who got his fashion sense from MGK. He told her to surrender the city because the demon lord had resurrected, but she responded by blasting him with the magic gun. When the smoke cleared up, he barely had any scratches and promised to add her to his harem by the next full moon. After he left, she saw Diablo floating with the girls on the altar from the dungeon. Right before it all collapsed, he carved it out and used his flight magic to save them all from certain doom, but then he saw that Lumina had been infected with the curse and realized that it was part of the spell Batutta cast. Shera told her to use her healing powers, but he reminded her that it could not work on her, so Lumina told them not to worry because she had already accepted her fate. Diablo then told her to have faith in him and promised to get rid of the curse before telling Horn to lead them to the dungeon he had been searching for. After his flight magic ran out, they decided to walk the rest of the way, but then Diablo saw Fones heading towards them with ships packed with her soldiers. Moments later, they got surrounded, and Fones demanded to know if he was the demon Lord Verness spoke of. Diablo had no idea what she was talking about, and the girls told him to play dumb so she would spare them, but his lack of common sense stopped him from understanding them, so he proclaimed himself to be the strongest demon lord who has ever walked the earth. Fones responded by arming her soldiers to test his strength, but Lumina and Rem stopped her to explain why they were heading towards the dungeon. Hearing their plans to cure the disease got her even more curious, so she ordered her soldiers to capture them, but Diablo activated a spell that caused an earthquake to shake them off balance so they could all escape. That night, Horn took them to a spot to eat and get their strength back, but while they were talking about it, Diablo was trying to figure out why Fones spared them despite having a clear shot when they were escaping. Sometime the next day, Jewalt paid Fones a visit to ask about Lumina and claimed to be her guardian sent from the church. When she told him about Diablo, Jewalt claimed he was a shameless flirt that made women lose their senses with his glizzy.
What do you mean by that?
Before Fones could ask him a couple more questions, a cadet came in to tell her the location of the dungeon Diablo and the girls were trying to find. At the time, they had just gotten there, and Shera immediately ran in to get started, but then the gargoyle guarding the entrance came to life and tried to rip out her milkers. Thankfully, Diablo blew it up with his staff and led them in to avoid any life-threatening surprises. On the way to the first floor, he told them to follow his every move to avoid the traps and left out the fact that he was the one who made the entire dungeon back when he was a shut-in geek. After getting to the maze on the first floor, Rem used the dangers of getting lost forever to scare Shera, so she bounced her milk jugs on Diablo's arm and begged for his protection. He could feel his remaining brain cells getting fried by the second and commanded her to get off because he thought being alpha would make her drop the cream pie, but she started crying. Rem said her melons were probably distracting him to make her feel better, and it actually worked, so Horn busted out his Dora, the Explorer map to get started. After seeing that the walls were constantly changing positions, they realized that a map was pointless, so Diablo blasted a hole straight through the maze and told them to follow his lead. Rem stopped him to say that it would be wise to take it slow since they didn't know much about the dungeon. Knowing that he created it, he faked another alpha tone and told her to keep her midget melon-lacking ass shut so he could focus. She also started crying, and he immediately regretted it, but he faked his bravado as always and pushed forward while they followed along and consoled each other. After easily going through a bunch of traps, they got to a tricky one where the girls had to strip every time they failed the question. Another wrong answer led to them dangling a few feet away from becoming KFC wings, and Diablo found it hard to think because their plots were scrambling his brain. After surviving that experience, they found hundreds of Yetis waiting in front of a stage and realized that they had to put on an epic performance to avoid getting ripped to shreds. Diablo had actually created that section because of a girl band he fell in love with back then, so he ordered them to get into position for choreography training. After what felt like eons of training, they went out to perform and put on a show that brought the zero IQ monsters to a point of evolution that allowed them to appreciate good music. Moments later, Shara and Diablo started blowing up demon birds while walking across a very thin edge, and Diablo was secretly praying to the Lord despite the fact that he created the challenge. Just then, a flying demon worm attacked them, and he realized that it was summoned by someone because of the collar on its neck. After he blew it up, the ground under them started to shatter, so they split up right before a trap worm broke through the wall. Diablo immediately recognized it, but by then, Jewalt had already gotten to Lumina and decided to cut her in half. Before he could finish her off, Horn pushed him off the edge, and they both fell into the raging waters. After telling the girls to stick with each other, Diablo also jumped off to save Horn. The girls lost all hope and thought he would drown, but he activated his Little Mermaid skill and dropped his staff to gain enough speed. Moments later, he had set up a fire to warm up and realized that Horn's soaked clothes would make him sick, so he pulled off a shirt and wondered why he had weirdly shaped melons.
That's suspicious.
He didn't think much of it until he pulled off Horn's pants and realized that the Horn didn't have any dingleberries.
What?
Just then, Horn woke up and thought Diablo was a PDF, so he immediately switched on his alpha voice and told her to be grateful that he saved her life. By then, the girls were trying to find their own way through the dungeon and decided to trust that Diablo would find his way back to them. Back at the cave, Diablo was struggling to keep his magnum sausage in check and asked Horn why she had been cross-dressing. After telling him that her dad never came back from getting the milk, she called him Daddy. So he started heading back into the dungeon to avoid her weirdness. Along the way, she asked if the girls would be safe on their own, so he told her about the monsters they would have to face on each new level, and knew they could easily protect themselves. His main concern was the guardian at the 12th floor, but then they also ran into a bunch of monsters, so he focused on dealing with them. Moments later, the girls got to the 12th floor and found Jewalt, who had just finished off the other monsters and got ready to send Lumina up to heaven by summoning an army of fire bees to attack them. Rem sent out her summons, and Shara shot out a couple of arrows, but he used his drag queen magic to stop them. The next moment, all their powers got cancelled out by the black dragon guarding the 12th floor. Jewel tried to explain that he was only trying to clap the holy snitch, but the dragon kept threatening to destroy them all, so he summoned a flame demon named Ifrit to fight off the dragon. The demon channeled his inner Mike Tyson and restructured the dragon's jawbone, but Jewel started losing magic energy and told him to speed it up. Ifrit charged up the flame jewel on his chest and torched the dragon, but he clearly forgot how fire breathing worked and got a brutal lesson when the dragon countered by burning a hole through his chest, causing him to experience instant cremation. Before Jewel could move a muscle, his insides got reorganized by the dragon's tail, but Lumina immediately went over to heal him. He asked why she was trying to save him, and she said it was the Lord's will, so he thanked her and started reconsidering his line of work. Rem and Shara tried negotiating with the dragon, but the scales in its brain stopped it from understanding economics, so it got ready to destroy them as well. Just then, Diablo finally showed up with Horn, and the dragon took off after sensing his power, but he casted a landmine spell that shot an energy beam right through the dragon's chest. He then infused his Grim Reaper's staff with dark magic and used it to chop off an arm and wing, causing the dragon to admit defeat. It tried leaving to heal its wound, but a girl stopped it at the door and summoned Transformer arms before turning the dragon to pixie dust. Rose also tried to do the same to the rest of them, but Diablo called out his gamer tag to remind her of who he was, and she immediately paid her respects. She escorted them to the vault on the final floor, and Rem asked who she was, but Rose was also curious to know why her master was hanging with a midget cat girl. They both started threatening each other, so he separated them and showed Lumina the statue imbued with magic properties capable of removing the curse. She could feel its divine energy and got closer to activate it with her touch, but the flow of holy magic caused her to make happy noises. She suddenly got weak in the knees, so Shara caught her by the melons and saw that the curse was already wearing off. After reaching peak happiness, Lumina passed out, so Diablo got changed, and Horn also tried out a new fit she found in the vault. Rem also found a new plotful outfit, and Shara started to feel left out, so Diablo gave her a ring from one of his old quests. He tried talking to Rose, but she was boiling with envy and reminded him of the time when she was all he had, so he gave her a special hairpin from when he first started gaming and told her to be grateful. After she took a look in the mirror and felt happy with his gift, Lumina woke up and said they had to head back to cure the people in the city. Rose stopped them and said it was pointless before pulling up live footage of Fones leading her army out to protect the city from Verness and his army of fallen. In a matter of minutes, more than half of Fones' men were sliced up and mashed together by Verness' fallen army. He called out to her to ask if she was finally ready to join his harem and showed her the rings he gave to his brides, but she called him stupid for thinking she would ever let his evil sausage get inside her vanilla buns. She then charged up her gun and shot a lightning beam right through his heart, causing her soldiers to regain confidence. She started giving orders to deal with the rest of his army, but then she saw one of his wives giving him a kiss that brought him back to life. After he commended her on being feisty, he made the second wife use her sonic scream to push Fones and her men back. Fones got back up to continue the fight, but her insides got ripped out by a dollar store hawk girl who didn't want her to join the harem. After she cut down all the soldiers on board, she grabbed Fones by the neck to squeeze out the rest of her confidence, but Fones had already given up hope and started praying for a savior. Just then, the entire battlefield lit up with lightning as Diablo revealed himself and got ready to demonstrate the true strength of a demon lord. Earlier on, he told the girls about his decision to stop Verness because he was posing as a servant to the greatest demon lord. They were a long distance away from the city, so he decided to use a teleportation feather that could take them all back because they had been to the city. Rose stepped back, knowing that she couldn't go with them, and promised to continue waiting for another chance to be with him. After giving it some thought, he told her to join them and said the teleportation would work on her since she was merely an item he owned. He immediately regretted calling her an object and thought she would hate his guts, but she didn't have self-respect programmed into her system and thanked him for objectifying her. Once they got to the battle, he kept using his lightning to blow up anything in sight, so Hawk Girl vanished through her dark portal. Rem used her summons to stop most of the fallen from attacking the soldiers, and Shara did the same with her arrows. Rose got wrapped up by a demon frog and promised to make them all suffer before summoning her mecha hands of death and turning the demons into shredded beef. While Lumina and Horn worked to heal the wounded soldiers, Diablo met up with Fones to come up with a plan for Verness. After taking a closer look and seeing him having fun with the plots of his wives, Diablo got pissed and charged up with his potions to finish them off. The Sonic Screamer first tried to stop him with a bunch of rocks, but he countered and used the same rocks to obliterate her. The dollar store hawk girl used the opportunity to sneak up on him, but he caught her arm and went sub-zero on her feathery rice cakes. Verness finally realized the danger he was in and stopped his mermaid wife from making any moves, so Diablo decided to make his and use a flame skill to torch them both, causing the little mermaid to wish she listened to her dad. Verness survived and got pissed at Diablo for clapping his wives, so he attacked with a flurry of blows, but Diablo easily dodged them all and used flight magic to get some space before using the White Nova spell to blow him up. Verness still remained in one piece and grabbed Diablo's neck to drain the magic out of his blood, but Diablo sliced off his arm and wished him luck with the Grim Reaper before stuffing his sword with magic and destroying him with a single slice. The next day, Fones threw a party in the city to thank Diablo, and he accepted her gratitude with the usual alpha pose, but then he saw that Horn had already left. At the time, she had been cornered by 3 washed-up adventurers who wanted everything she got from the quest with Diablo and the girls. Horn told them she left without taking anything, and the adventurers started making jokes about how Diablo was a beta simp using the girls to hide his weakness. She defended him and told them all about the life-threatening battles they fought, but that only got them pissed and ready to smash her face in. Just then, Diablo showed up and gave them a chance to let her go, but they charged in to fight him instead, so he booked them a permanent stay at the ER and carried Horn away on his back. After saying she shouldn't have left without getting permission from him, Diablo told her to stay with them for as long as she wanted, and she gladly thanked him. That night, Fones went to Diablo's room to offer her melons in exchange for his continued protection over the city. Earlier on, Lumina told him about her plans to visit the royal capital because of the threat of a new demon lord and also asked for his protection. He tried explaining it to Fones, but she had already locked him with her drumsticks and pressed her milkers into his face. He tried to stop her with his alpha voice, but she kept trying to smash, so he ran away to hide the fact that he was a two-punk chump. Days later, he and the girls made it back to Faltra and started making plans to reunite with Clem before heading off to the royal capital. Lumina then said she also wanted to visit the local church to pray for the believers in the city. She needed someone else to protect, but thankfully, Emil was right there to shamelessly offer his services as the world's most corny escort. Just then, Sylvie showed up to remind him that he had other things to do and told Diablo that Edelgard was now working at a cafe. The thought of a psycho ex-demon general baking scones didn't sit well with him, so they quickly went over to the bakery, and he saw that she was likely baking up poison for the locals. After she explained that it was the only way to deal with Clem's addiction to biscuits, Nay showed up and told them the inn had gone bankrupt because rumors of the new demon lord stopped people from visiting the city. Peter interrupted their reunion to complain about how his bakery started struggling after the biscuit black hole named Clem showed up. Clem ignored his complaints and demanded a fresh batch, so he tried to stand his ground, but Edelgard threatened to fold him like a pretzel, so he remembered his place and ran off to serve them. After Diablo told Clem about his plans to visit the royal capital, Celestine showed up to see Clem, and he found it suspicious until he remembered that he told her to keep an eye on the planet-destroying biscuit addict. Just then, 3 goons came in and demanded to know why Peter was running a bakery without permission from someone called Mismos. Before he could explain himself, the lead goon started demanding an absurd price for a statue he claimed was made for business owners by the Mages Association. Celestine said she had never approved of any overpriced statues before, but the goon kept struggling with Peter until the statue smashed Clem's biscuit. She immediately went off the rails and tried to send them to an early grave, but Diablo told her to keep them alive, so she blasted them out through the door and threatened to bake their balls if they ever came back. Peter and Nay told them about the network of goons working for Mismas and said there was no point in keeping the bakery open any longer. That made Clem even angrier, so Diablo decided to do something about it. Moments later, the goon was making a report to Mismos while Diablo had just blown the gates open and got welcomed with clocks pointed at them. Edelgard tried to smoke them on the spot, but Rose stopped her to suggest tearing them limb from limb instead. After using his explosion spell to drop the gunslingers, Diablo led them inside, where a failed NBA star was waiting to show off his combat skills. He charged up his fist to smash Clem's face in, but she cracked his nuts with a kick that launched him a couple hundred feet away. Diablo then asked for Misma's office, and they went in to see the mafia boss, who turned out to be an ugly midget. Before Diablo could come up with the right approach to scare him off, Clem released some of her anger with a blast of dark magic that tore through the mansion and ruined Nismos' wig. After a lot of deliberating, they decided to subject him to endless hours of community service as punishment, and thankfully that was enough to stop Clem from committing murder. That night, they all met up at a restaurant and were trying to enjoy dinner when Galfred showed up to ask questions about Clem and Edelgard. He had heard some not-so-childish rumors about her and told Diablo he was ready to risk his life if she was actually a threat to the city. Just then, Peter showed up to thank her for scaring off Mismas and told Galfred that the whole Demon Lord thing was just a joke they made at the shop. Celestine also came in to thank her because Nisma's goons had dropped by the association to apologize for selling the fake statues. 2 whack-job rappers who clearly only listened to Playboy Cardi and a bunch of locals waiting to thank Clem made him change his mind about her, so he decided to leave them alone. The next day, Emil tried to rizz up Lumina again, but she brutally rejected him. After Sylvie wished them luck, they got started on their journey to the royal capital, where Vishos was waiting to handle Lumina. Days later, they finally arrived at the royal capital, but they immediately got surrounded by knights who demanded to know why Lumina was hiding her face. Diablo got up to stop them from seeing her face, but then Alicia showed up and told the knights to stand down. Moments later, she took them to one of the most luxurious inns in the capital and offered to buy up the entire building if Diablo wished for it. Rose started asking questions about the kind of relationship she had with him, and Diablo got scared, thinking that all the things Alicia did in the past would cause Rose to clap her on the spot. Thankfully, Alicia still had her dark side and wasn't scared to show it, so Rose backed down and decided to accept her as one of Diablo's possessions. Later on, Horn's digestive system reached breaking point after she tried to gobble down the entire buffet. She desperately wanted to get stronger to be of service to Diablo, but Rem told her not to bother because her kind, unfortunately, didn't have any growth hormones, which caused them to remain in their dwarf state forever. Rose then gave her an enslavement collar that she said would grant her some of Diablo's strength if she forged a pact with him. The idea sounded good at first until Rem explained that it also meant her fate would be tied to his. She also pointed out the fact that she would not be able to get married or have a normal life, but that suddenly gave all three of them an idea to become Diablo's wives. Rose immediately took back the collar and told her to stick to stuffing her face. Later on, Alicia showed Diablo to his room and knelt down to ask for permission to sit beside him. After he granted her request, she told him about her life after what happened in Falter City and explained that she was currently under confinement by the kingdom, but all he could notice was the fact that her melons had aged like fine wine. She wanted to be of help to him and asked about everything that brought him to the royal capital to see if she had some information that would help Lumina. After he gave her all the details, she told him that it would be impossible for the kingdom to get involved with Vishos and his army of corrupt paladins because the church was above the laws of the nation. She then got back on her knees and begged him to take them all down with his powers, but he started to realize that she might be a lot more dangerous than the cardinals. After she apologized for getting so intense, she left and he tried to get some shut-eye, but Rose suddenly showed up and startled him. She then explained that being away from the dungeon had been causing her to lose power. Staying close to him gave her some essence of his magic to stay functional, and she had actually been staying beside him every night since they left the dungeon without his knowledge. Unfortunately, she couldn't get any power from him once he hit the snooze button, so she suggested a super fast technique that would max out her batteries. He asked if she would like to get on the bed for the process, but she reminded him of the immense weight of her robotic skeleton and said they had to do it on the floor. He was still trying to figure out what the technique was when she started to strip and caused his brain matter to spray out of his nostrils. She then explained that he had to plug into her back holes, so he got into character and grabbed her cakes for some brutal derriere shots. His touch caused her robotic sweat pores to leak, and he also felt the intensity of the workout, but he managed to keep his wood bricked so she could finish first. The next day, Alicia came back with the church's financial records and said she had to bribe a group of believers called the White Masks to get them. She then explained that Vishos and the other corrupt cardinals had been using donations to fund their exotic lifestyle and clapped anybody that tried to stand against them. Hearing that brought Lumina to tears, so Alicia proposed starting a bloody purge to make them all pay, but Diablo knocked the psychosis out of her head. He also agreed that something had to be done and decided to handle it with his powers, but Lumina asked for one more chance to do it the right way by excommunicating Vishos and the other cardinals. Moments later, they were in religious cloaks and used a carriage to get to the cathedral. Once inside the compound, Lumina showed them the floating sanctuary used by Vishos and his immediate subordinates and tried leading them to a floating passageway, but the religious locals stopped them to offer up prayers. They were about to finish up when Vishos came out with a bunch of other cardinals and recognized Lumina. After they took off the cloaks, he acted like he had been expecting her, but she told him to drop the act and exposed all their evil acts before getting the excommunication order. Vishos immediately spun a story to make it sound like Lumina had been corrupted by Diablo and said she was trying to tear down the purity of the church. She got emotional and tried to defend herself, but that only gave Vishos an opportunity to make his allegations stronger, causing the other believers to question Lumina's purity. Vishos then ordered an army of paladins to seize them, so Diablo decided to use his powers, but she stopped him and said it would be wrong to spill blood in the cathedral. As the paladins and locals swarmed them, Horn got scared and ran away, and Lumina decided to surrender herself to judgment so they wouldn't cause harm to the innocent believers. Diablo then used a lightning blast to calm the crowd, and they all walked through before taking the floating passage up to the sanctuary for Lumina's judgment. After placing Diablo and the girls in a cell, Vishos made the paladins take Lumina to a separate cell so he could plan her execution. At the time, Horn was back at the inn, packing up to leave, but then she saw the Holy Grail from Diablo's dungeon and kept crying until Babylon revealed herself. Horn got startled and wondered why one of Peter Pan's girlfriends was standing in front of her, so Babylon explained that she was a level-up goddess that lived inside the Grail. Hearing that gave Horn hope, so she begged Babylon for a level-up that would grant her abilities to help Diablo and the girls. After multiple attempts to crack her skull on the ground, Babylon accepted and told her not to worry about pain because she had already drunk some of her blood and liked the weird taste. Horn thought about it for a moment and remembered emptying her bladder into the Grail that night at the dungeon. She decided to keep that information to herself, and Babylon went through with the level-up spell, but after seeing that it didn't have any effect, Horn worried that it could have been because Babylon was still filled with bunny pee. Babylon sensed another power source in Diablo's room, so they went there, and Horn found the enslavement collar Rose tried to give her earlier on. Babylon reminded her of the risk involved with forging the pact, but Horn accepted it and put the collar on herself. Back in Diablo's cell, Rose offered to blow the door off if he was too tired to do it himself, but he told them to give Lumina a chance to do things her way. Moments later, Horn got to the floating passageway and kindly asked the guards for a pass. They tried to skewer her on the spot, so she used the power of love to hypnotize them and made them tell her Diablo's location before using an air kiss to finish them off. She kept easily finding her way through the sanctuary and asked Babylon if a mental map was part of the level up, so Babylon told her she was currently on the same level as the strongest local warrior. Before Horn could process the shock, 2 more paladins showed up, but thankfully, her love charm was strong enough to deactivate their ability to think, so she escaped. Moments later, she found Diablo's cell and started trying to pry the door open without realizing that Grun was behind her, activating a summon. The next moment, Horn got clawed by the beast and started losing blood, so Diablo busted the door open, and she asked why he didn't just do that when she first got there. While he fed her some of his healing potion, the girls used their abilities to hold off Grun's summoning. When Horn started to feel better, Diablo noticed the enslavement collar and asked why she took that risk. Grun then called her a fool for throwing her life away for strength that was practically useless to Diablo, but he said she had actually helped him realize that he had been playing soft all along because of Lumina's request. Grun could tell that he had gotten serious, so she summoned an abomination to destroy him, but he combined the flare, burst, and lightning strike skills to blow it up. Grun then used the smoke for a surprise attack at top speed, but Diablo dodged them all and only got a scratch on his chest. She got tired of his showing off and summoned 3 abominations, thinking they would be enough to stop him, but then he used elemental magic to create a boulder that destroyed the abominations and crushed Grun before breaking through the wall. The next moment, he projected himself to the people and swore to punish them for betraying Lumina and their god. He kept teasing them with lightning blasts and went as far as threatening to become a medieval Hitler, but then Lumina showed up. He felt better and thought she would use her divine powers so he could fake a defeat and restore the people's faith in her, but she decided to accept his punishment and got on her knees with the other believers to gladly get obliterated by his dark magic. While he was dealing with the shock, Vicious had just finished cooking up his trump card, and the entire church felt it as Europa came out to destroy everything in sight. After hearing Vicious' voice claiming he had become a god, they both realized that he was inside Europa, and Diablo called him a clown for failing to realize that Europa was just a giant summoning, which made it impossible for him to reach god status. Vicious refused to believe it and started shooting out plasma beams, so Diablo dodged until he started to feel the strength Europa was giving off. He managed to counter with a blast, but then he realized that Vicious was using defensive magic to make himself invincible. He tried to blow them both up together, but Diablo vanished with Lumina and told her about a special divine ability while running to escape Vicious. After she got back outside and started the prayer, Diablo went to keep Vicious busy, but then Rose got in front with the same idea. She summoned the Transformer arms to finish him off, but then Vicious countered with an attack that scattered the arms like Legos and tore off one of Rose's arms. Diablo immediately tried to help her, but she promised it was okay and said she was happy to have finally been useful to him. He then told Lumina to continue the prayer and used a lava wall to block Vicious' blast, but it tore through and blasted him away. Just then, Lumina finished the prayer and shot out a divine energy beam, but Vicious countered with his and slowly overpowered her. The believers all started saying prayers to help Lumina, and their combined spirit light gave her enough strength to push back against Vicious until her light blasted through his defenses and canceled out the shields. Diablo immediately armed 2 spears with opposing dark magic forces and charged them up to the max before hurling them both into Vicious' eyes. As he started to combust from the inside, Diablo used a pocket dimension to control the blast, but it was still too great and almost blew the entire capital city away. Just then, Rem found Gewalt after he clapped all of Vicious' personal soldiers and asked why, but he told her not to worry about it and gave her a key that led Lumina to a cell where Treya had been stashed away. The next day, Lumina gave Diablo a chest of gold coins for their trip back to Faltra and said she had to stay back to fix the church. She then came to a realization and got on her knees to ask if he could become the head of the Paladins, but he activated his Sigma voice and said he was too powerful for such a position. She accepted his claims and apologized for even thinking of something so stupid, but he told her not to worry too much because it was probably just the effects of his aura on her mind. Afterwards, he tried to enjoy a peaceful bath, but both Shara and Rem got in and ended up squeezing him in between their melons, causing him to enter a state of shock. Later on, the girls were having a chat while dragging the carriage back into the city, and Diablo was on Rose's thighs, asking if she was going to be okay. After telling him that she had regenerative features that would eventually kick in, she asked why he left Horn behind. Before they left, Horn asked his permission to stay back and learn magic from scratch, and Alicia thought it was pointless given her already advanced level, but Diablo told her to do as she pleased and told Rose that he didn't like holding people back. Just then, they finally got to Faltra, where Clem and Edelgard were trying regular food for the first time, while Emil was trying to do something other than being a total creep. Fones was actually also in Faltra at the time and got excited to play with Diablo's Magnum sausage again, and Lumina had already started working on the repairs to the sanctuary. Later on, Shara showed Diablo the ring she got from the dungeon, and Rose said it was actually a wedding ring, causing Shara to feel like an actual wife, while Rem thought she was the useless side piece. She asked if he had one for her, and he moved away to dodge the question, but Shara told her she had already gotten a special quest from Sylvie to get a ring for Rem as well. Rem didn't expect her to suddenly be okay with sharing him, so Shara said she had fallen in love with their three-way clapping sessions, and that made Diablo excited to start the new quest. Will Diablo figure out who the new demon lord is and be able to stop them, or will Fones and the girls finally get to try out his glizzy? That is it for this video. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe to the channel for similar content. And as always, thanks for watching.